Muslim extremists are accused of waging a campaign of ethnic cleansing against Christians in Nigeria.
Nigeria is in the midst of an incipient civil war in which both indigenous forces, some from far removed, who have in common what I call Sharia supremacism, are engaged in a ethno-religious cleansing of Nigeria.
The human rights watchdog Open Doors USA ranked Nigeria as the 12th most hostile to Christians in their 2018 report. These Christian regions are also where the oil and natural resources are located, meaning that the anti-Christian jihad is fueled by a quest to seize these riches. Gaffney said the humanitarian crisis for Christians can no longer be ignored.
The trouble with this scenario is not only the bloodletting of innocent people simply because they follow Jesus Christ, but large numbers of those people will be fleeing the resultant mayhem.
The graduate of Georgetown's Foreign Service School said the ongoing destruction of Nigerian Christians will go down as one of the worst genocides in history.
Lebanon high school student says she was recently suspended for posting Bible verses on lockers and walls inside her school.
And she said she felt the need to, quote, share the word of God with her classmates. School officials suspended her, claiming she violated the student code of conduct. According to her supporters, this was the verse she shared. When Gabby returned from lunch, she claims teachers were tearing down her quotes.
Come up here, honey. I want to show you what brave looks like. I want to show you what a hero looks like.
Solid Rock Church standing with a 14-year-old student.
I said, all of Solid Rock Church will back you. I said, if we have to, we'll bring 1,000 people and show up at the parking lot of Lebanon High School.
The school at the center of controversy. It all started with a pride flag. The freshman said she saw pride flag posters around Lebanon High School last week. In a Facebook video, she said, I felt the need to write down some Bible verses so I could put them around my school. She went on to say, there was people in my school that needed help, and they don't need to be living in the confusion of wondering if they should be gay, bi, lesbian, trans. And I know that God is the only way that they can be healed by that, and that's why I did it.
As departure lounges go, this has to be among the worst in the world. A pitiful place to wait for a journey they know may cost them their lives. Everyone here is waiting to travel to Britain. They know not when nor how, but there is only one destination they'll consider. Ahmed has tried already to make it by boat. This grainy photo shows him and 7 others crossing the channel before Christmas. The French Coast Guard plucked their flimsy dinghy from the channel before it sank. Now he's back in Calais, plotting a second attempt.
We want to go to UK because this place is not safe, and I can speak English, and my sister living there. I prefer go to UK. If I'm alive, not dead, I try. With boat, with lorry, with swim.
Reza has also travelled here from Iran with his daughter Mariam. He's too afraid to go in a boat, so for now they're stuck. They're unwilling to claim asylum here because they think the French government is too close to the Iranian regime and their future will be better in Britain.
Only we need a home for children, only.
So cold. First
After I crying for my father and my mother, I said, right now you have to go and fight for me. What is good? After my father and my mother said, where I have to go? After I say I want to go England.
The migrant.
Multicultural night made some parents mad. The idea was to have families come share their stories to promote cultural understanding. But several parents in Fulton County emailed us upset about the map of a Middle East that was on display there. This is the map of the Middle East that they're talking about. Where present-day Israel should be, it shows Palestine. The Israel-Palestinian conflict goes back decades, with both sides arguing over who owns rights to the land. Several Israeli and Jewish parents say the map is highly offensive and brought it to the attention of Autry Middle School's principal.
Conflict in the Middle East leading to a controversy here in Atlanta when someone displayed this map Thursday at Autry Middle School. Two Jewish mothers who say they attended the school's multicultural event talked with us today.
Anybody that was exposed to this last night that doesn't even know, what's the story behind all this, right now thinks that this is the map of Palestine.
Israel was not mentioned on that map at all. They basically wrote Palestine in the place of Israel. They talk about the Palestinians from the land to the sea, which means having all of the Jews wiped away and Palestinians on that land instead.
These images show a table representing Israel at the event with cultural pictures, food, and books. The mothers say parents brought the map to the principal's attention Thursday night, but say it stayed up.
That nobody in the school was going over the content of the material that is being presented.
Today, Principal J.E. Trey Martin sent a letter to parents. He wrote 500 people attended and more than 15 countries were represented, but added he was, quote, extremely disappointed and disgusted with the individuals who presented an insensitive political and geographic representation. This display does not represent our school culture, which is one that values inclusion and unity. Talk to a Palestinian American about the map, though, and you can find a different viewpoint. Reverend Fahid Aboyakel is an Arab American living in Atlanta for 50 years. He says the state of Palestine existed on the land until 1948 and believes students should learn the land's history.
Israel became a state in 1948, and the United Nations, with the nations of the world, recognized Israel. That's a fact, but you cannot deny that the Palestinians do not exist.
Tweet saying it is time for the United States to fully recognize Israel's sovereignty over the Golan Heights. That is one of the world's most disputed territories. Margaret Brennan has details on this.
Thank you, America. Thank you.
Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, in the midst of a tough re-election fight, thanked President Trump for declaring the territory seized from Syria after the 1967 war a permanent part of Israel.
Thank you, America.
A welcome policy shift from President Donald Trump. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu hailed a historic moment for his nation.
First, he recognized Jerusalem as Israel's capital and moved the U.S. embassy here. Then he pulled out of the disastrous Iran treaty and reimposed sanctions. But now he did something of equal historic importance. He recognized Israel's sovereignty over the Golan Heights.
In an earlier tweet, President Donald Trump said the Golan Heights was, quote, of critical strategic and security importance to the state of Israel and regional stability.
Our prayers are with our friends in Israel as they carry out an incredible way of life in the face of great terror. The United States recognizes Israel's absolute right to defend itself. The despicable attack this morning demonstrates the significant security challenges that Israel faces every single day. And today I am taking historic action to promote Israel's ability to defend itself and really to have a very powerful, very strong national security, which they're entitled to have.
He's the first American president to recognize the Jewish state's sovereignty over the region. The Golan is a rocky plateau covering some 1,200 square kilometers, sandwiched between Lebanon, Israel, Syria, and Jordan. Israel captured it from Syria during the Six-Day War of 1967 and formally annexed it in 1981. Other governments, including the US, did not recognize the act. Today, Syria continues to claim sovereignty over the region, and much of the international community considers it to be occupied. Trump's announcement came as US Secretary of State Mike Pompeo visited Jerusalem on Thursday, a trip that takes place just weeks before a crucial election in Israel. The US has made no secret of its support for Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, who's facing a tough battle for re-election. Trump and Netanyahu will hold a working meeting in Washington next week, followed by a dinner at the White House.
This afternoon, the president explained his decision.
I've been thinking about doing it for a long time. It's been a very hard decision for every president. No president has done it.
It's not about Netanyahu's re-election.
No, I wouldn't even know about that.
Today's U.S. recognition did not change anything on the ground. The UN has policed the territory, which is smaller than Rhode Island, for decades, and thousands of Syrians still live there. But the decision is a win for Netanyahu, just 19 days ahead of the election. He's under pressure as he faces a possible criminal indictment on charges of bribery and corruption. Netanyahu has sought to capitalize on his close relationship with Mr. Trump, even featuring him in campaign ads to sway conservative voters who have cheered the administration's decisions to pull out of the Iran nuclear deal and move the U.S. Embassy to Jerusalem. Today, Secretary of State Mike Pompeo delivered a further boost as he became the highest-ranking U.S. official to tour the Western Wall alongside the Prime Minister. Yet another disputed site.
Now, making policy decisions in a way that could affect the outcome of a U.S. ally's election is questionable for many diplomats, but the decision itself is popular with President Trump's own evangelical supporters. Prime Minister Netanyahu will also visit the White House next week.
So basically, we're not going to expect any kind of a flare-up. But I do think that this is going to have a kind of a long-term effect because the demand that the Golan Heights goes back to Syria is not a demand solely of the Ba'ath regime. It's not a demand only of one party, but also other parties in Syria believe that the Golan Heights, or the Quneitra district, as it's often referred to, is part and parcel of Syria, and this is something which unites all the political spectrum in Syria, whether we're talking about Islamists, nationalists, or the different groups in Syria. So I think that we're still going to have issues on this in the future.
Out of Washington comes this.
After carefully studying all sides of the legal debate, this administration agrees with President Reagan. The establishment of Israeli civilian settlements in the West Bank is not, per se, inconsistent with international law.
Yeah, that from the same Trump administration which moved its embassy to Jerusalem and recognized the annexation of the Golan Heights, once again breaking with the rest of the international community, and according to critics, hammering another nail in the coffin of a two-state solution for peace between Israelis and Palestinians. We're going to be asking our panel what the U.S. recognition of those Jewish settlements actually changes. A recognition of facts on the ground, or a nod to hardliners to buy and or seize more Palestinian land? The answer to that question, to answer it rather, we're going to need to ask why the settlers have moved there in the first place. And then, of course, well, there's the calculus in Washington. Why Donald Trump, even in the middle of an impeachment battle, still has the time to fight for Bibi? Will Monday's announcement actually tip the scales in favor of Netanyahu against Benny Gantz, who as former Army Chief of Staff can hardly be branded a dove? What happens now and what happens in the long run?
Nearly 20,000 innovators and investors from almost every country came to see or signed up online for the largest tech meeting in the history of Israel, the Our Crowd Global Investor Summit. The summit brings together extraordinary technologies like Beyond Meat that develop a plant-based meat substitute and many more. Very good. They make water out of air.
We think that we found the solution for the entire world, for the new source of drinking water.
They plan to connect the world through microsatellites.
There are 4 billion people in the world that are not connected. they need to be able to choose whether to connect, to be connected.
And they help the paralyzed get on their feet.
It's very innovative. It's perfect. It's so stable. And when I walked down the aisle with it, it was a dream come true.
Our Crowd showcased all these technologies. John Medved is the CEO and founder.
Our Crowd is the world's largest investment platform for investors to invest in startups online and in person at events like this Our Crowd Summit.
At the summit, investors meet innovators. Our Crowd democratizes capital by giving smaller investors an opportunity to invest in cutting-edge innovations, just like the large venture capitalists. After 6 years, Our Crowd is celebrating $1 billion raised for 170 companies. But the bottom line is changing the world. They call it the double bottom line, making money and doing good.
What's most exciting about today's event is that we're focused on impact, on how startups can tackle global challenges, how we can look right in the eye these issues of climate change and pollution, hunger, healthcare, transportation, energy, and how can startups really bring to humanity a huge impact.
The bottom line is changing the world. They call it the double bottom line. Medved sees the summit through the lens of the Bible.
It's a little bit biblical today because the nations are flocking to Israel to see what we can do to help tackle global challenges and how they can bring back those lessons to their own countries.
It explains it as an expression of tikkun olam, the Jewish concept of healing the world. Betty Wu Adams believes Christians can play a role.
God is our first entrepreneur. He created this world out of nothing for the first 6 days. I believe there's a calling for us as Christians to partner with Our Crowd as we invest in companies that's going to transform and change the world.
Adams sees this as a way to bless Israel.
Read your Bible. What does God say in Genesis to Father Abraham? This is the apple of his eyes. The Jews are his chosen people. This land is written in the Bible.
A Catholic woman set free by a Pakistani court on blasphemy charges says she still fears for her life. The country's Supreme Court is weighing a petition from Islamic extremists who want her executed. According to a new report, she's not the only one. The persecution of Christians is on the rise around the world.
Christian refugees in the Middle East have been persecuted, ignored, and finally forgotten by Western governments. But a former Archbishop of Canterbury is saying enough.
Lord George Carey has announced he's suing Britain's Home Office, alleging that politically correct officials have been institutionally biased against Christian refugees. He also wants to find out why out of the 60,000 Syrian war refugees accepted into the United States and Britain in 2014, almost none were Christian. Lord Carey's attorney, Paul Diamond, explains the case.
And so you have this absurd situation that a scheme is set up to help Syrian refugees, and the people most in need, Christians who have been genocided, they can't even get into the UN camps to get the food. The Muslim UN guards will block you getting in. They'll laugh at you and mock you and threaten you.
Another Syrian refugee, Timothy, who told us he became a Christian after seeing Jesus in a dream, said he was also blocked from entering a refugee camp by Muslim UN officials.
All of the United Nations, almost of them, 99%, they are Muslims. They were treating us as
Duka zagi horo shine kullum abin da ake mana nan. Ana fakewa ana cewa ana karatu. Ba a karatu tsakani da Allah. Kome da muke yi sai dai mu yi shi don wahala, don duka, amma ba ma yin shi don tsoron Allah. Duk mutumin da ya ce maka yana sallah a nan tsakaninsa da Allah ƙarya ne, sai dai ya yi don tsoron bulala ko don tsoron duka. Babu shi. Dukanmu a nan.
We're witnessing a persecution of Christians on a scale that makes what Pol Pot and Hitler and Stalin and Mao did in their day combined pale by comparison.
The world are facing the same persecution. According to Open Doors USA, their annual watch list identifies the worst violators of religious freedom. North Korea is number 1 again, but so are many countries in Asia, Africa, and the Middle East. David Curry is the group's president.
What we see is more governments using laws and their police force to control, and in some cases seeking to eliminate the expression of Christian faith.
And we think about that. We think about our many brothers and sisters in other parts of the world who face terrible persecution. Hardly seems like 2 weeks can go by without hearing of some terrible massacre in Pakistan, in Egypt, in Iran, in other places where Christians are terribly persecuted. And it makes us wonder, as our own culture becomes more and more ungodly, is some kind of persecution on the way for us? It very well could be. Look, I really believe, as I said before, God gives every generation some reason to believe that Jesus is coming again. And I think he's given us more than some reason. I think he's given us a lot of reasons. So if somebody wants to say, well, David, couldn't God delay and recreate the same conditions on the world 100 years from now? Yes, he could, but I'm not going to take that chance. I'm not trying to act like these conditions are completely unique to our times. Many of them existed before, and many of them may exist in the future. Yeah, I think you'd be a fool if you did not look around at the world to say, so much of the world lines up with what the Bible said it would be like.
Is wearing a burqa because she doesn't want anyone to see her face or know her real name and country. She's from South Asia, where blasphemy laws could result in her going to jail or even death.
Imagine walking down a corridor and the walls around you beginning to come in on you, and the path that you're walking on constantly shifting, constantly changing. And that's the life of a secret believer. That's the life of a Christian.
Hannah is a teacher, but she says she can't teach what is good and true. She's forced to use biased textbooks, which paint non-Muslims as second-class citizens.
From the very earliest days of their exposure to studies, to academics, to learning, they are already being reminded, if they're Christian, they're being reminded that there's no place for you here.